On today's Hot Sheet, I'm discussing the June 17 through 18 FOMC meeting. It's the Fed decision, Jerome Powell's statements on housing. We have it all. We pulled it all from the transcripts for you. Today is Thursday, June 19. Happy Juneteenth, 2025. I am Byron Lazine, and the Hot Sheet starts now. Live from Connecticut. Here we go. It's Jerome Powell Day. My favorite. It comes once every 45 days. We get this, 9 times a year? How many FOMC meetings are there a year? Well, it's my favorite day of the month. Once every 45 days. Jerome Powell Day. 8. There's 8. I don't know what we're going to do when we don't have Jerome Powell anymore. We're going to have to rename it. Interestingly enough, yesterday, I put this on X, at Byron Lazine on X. If you want to get connected there, but I reposted this on X, and of course now I'm gonna have to log in. I'll get logged in real quick and show it to you. This was hilarious. I don't know what we're going to use for Jerome Powell Day anymore, but we may have an answer to it. Okay, we may have someone who's taking the seat next. It's interesting. Throw some names in the chat. Who would be the next Fed chair that you'd want to see? Okay. Of course, they're asking me for a code.
Will it be Eric Simon, the broke agent, as the new Federal Reserve chair? Everybody spam it in the chat.
That is not Bobby, what I posted. Bobby's here for Haley. Let me know if you like that. Bobby's filling in for Haley here on the Hot Sheet. Bobby helped create this show, and then he bails on it. It's Haley most of the time.
Exactly. I mean, that's all great leaders do. They delegate. They establish the thing. You don't run everything all the time.
All right. So here we go. This is a tweet from Nick T. He's the Adam Schefter of the Fed, Wall Street Journal. He says if the Fed would cut rates by 100 or 250 basis points, then the Treasury could term out the debt. That was Trump, not Nick T. So he's quoting Trump yesterday. Powell says refuses to do it. And then Trump floated the idea here of making himself the Fed chair. President Trump on Fed chair Powell. We have a not so smart person. He used a different word. Frankly, at the Fed, he probably won't cut today. Maybe I should go to the Fed. Am I allowed to appoint myself at the Fed? So I don't know. Maybe it'll be Trump Day in the future, not Jerome Powell Day. I think that is a 0.000 chance of having. You don't want to put a 0% chance on anything, but in this case, I'll put a 0.00% chance on the Fed chair ever one day becoming Trump. But it's Jerome Powell
for
Day.
Tom Toole.
Tom Toole for the Fed chair. That would be unbelievable. All right. Let me know, obviously, in the live chat where you're tuning in from. I'm live from Connecticut. It's Jerome Powell Day. Let's get into it. We have a press release that comes out on Fed decision day. Comes out at 2:00, and then Jerome Powell meets the press, does the presser. We extract all the data in that Q&A session as it relates to housing or anything that could impact the housing market. And, this one here versus 45 days ago, there's a lot more to chew into. I actually thought one of the comments was really telling. I've been saying for years, a couple of years now, hey, Jerome Powell, the Fed, they don't care about the housing market. Real estate recession, don't care. Go rent a house. America, become a renter nation. That's how the Fed feels. They don't give a crap about the housing market. They don't care if it's not a mandate from Congress that people have long-term wealth in this country. Congress isn't concerned about your stock portfolio. Nancy, Chuck, the rest, they're concerned about their stock portfolio. Just watch how many wizards are in Congress when it comes to the stock market. Do they care about American citizens' long-term growth? I question that. Fed doesn't have a mandate from Congress to care. It's maximize employment, Okay. Not great employment, not employment where you can buy a house. Maximize employment, number one, and number 1A or 1 to 1A, however you want to put it. Get inflation down to 2%. Well, inflation's basically there. Powell doesn't want to acknowledge it. We'll get into some of that Q&A, but it's kind of there. Employment's pretty maximized right now, getting softer, but kind of maximized. All right. So in the press release, right off the top, although swings in net exports have affected the data, recent indicators suggest that the economic activity has continued to expand. Atlanta Fed, I don't know if you can pull this, Bobby. I don't have it up. Atlanta Fed just came out with their prediction for GDP quarter two. That's what I want you to pull. And it was like over 3.5%. So that wouldn't be a solid pace. That would be a huge pace. Bobby, do you want to pull that? Share that? Okay. So this was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, this is what top page of Google is giving us.
Yeah, and I saw this. So we're going to go with top page of Google right now because I saw this a couple weeks ago. GDP now model, Atlanta Fed.
Oh yeah, it's from their website, right? It's sourcing their website right underneath.
Second quarter, 3.4%. Okay. So, I mean, it ticked down one day from June, 17 to June 18, but, roughly 3.5% on GDP growth for quarter three. That would not be solid pace. That would be a screamer for Q2, kind of from where we're at. Powell goes on, or the committee goes on to say in the prepared statements, the unemployment rate remains low. We're talking about 4.2. He kind of got hung up on that. Really, that hard data for Powell. I mean, he's a believer. Unemployment is low. We've seen 3 weeks now of some softening conditions. Labor market conditions remain solid. Inflation remains somewhat elevated. I mean, I'd argue he's talking out of both sides of his mouth on the inflation thing. He said when we get close to 2, we're close to 2. We're near it. We're basically there. You pull out owner's equivalent rent, we're under 2. But he keeps talking about somewhat elevated and having lots of concerns about the future. We're going to get into those comments here just momentarily. The committee reiterates the 2% over the longer run. So, I mean, that is one of the things I think, Powell, you could use to defend Powell here. Hey, just because we're near 2, we need 2% for the longer run. Longer run, key word there. You need it over time. You need to consistently be at that number. Per the mandate from Congress, uncertainty about the economic outlook has diminished but remains elevated. So it still loves the uncertainty word, used it in the first couple of paragraphs here for the committee. They're attentive to the risk on both sides of its dual mandate. Okay. So those are the prepared statements. And let's move forward here into some of the we'll go to their projections. This was one of the meetings where they have their projections, and then we're going to get into the Q&A, and there's some fascinating stuff in the Q&A. Okay. So economic projections of the Federal Reserve members and Federal Reserve Bank presidents. So this is the dot plot that you hear about. Okay. I'll show that in a second, but here's some of the projections. Change in real GDP. March projection was 1.7. It was 1.4 now versus 1.7 quarter one. For 2025. Here we go. 2025 change in GDP. 1.4 versus 1.7, 1.6 versus 1.8, 1.8 versus 1.8 on 2027. So those numbers are relatively unchanged. Real change in real GDP. Those are low, not under 2. We want 3+%. This Fed, Atlanta Fed projection for quarter 2, that's where we want GDP growth. Okay. If we're going to have a chance to ever chip away at deficit, we got to grow. We got to expand. If you want your business to expand, top line sales are an important component of it. Sales is kind of a cure-all. Okay. I mean, it's one thing to cut expenses in your business. It's another thing to grow sales, not be greedy about, I only want sales in a particular location, a particular zip. I don't want to work with those buyers at that comp. Gross sales. Okay, there's only 4 million of them out there in over the year. We just had this conversation. Like across the country, there's not a lot of sales to go. It ain't 21 anymore. Grow top line revenue. America's going to grow. They need to grow top line revenue. Bobby, can this button work when I hit it, please?
Yes, it can.
Because it never does when I'm in Connecticut. My button in Naples works all the damn time.
Because the weather is better in Naples. That's why.
I don't. I mean, the buttons work.
Hold on. There we go. Wait. Damn
Look at this. This is a hack job of a performance here, Bobby. So Bobby takes over.
Yeah. Hold on, guys.
And look what's going on here. All right, I'll keep going through this. Unemployment projections are pretty much unchanged. 4.5 to 4.4, 4.5 for next year, 4.5 to 4.3. Actually going lower on unemployment. PCE and inflation. I'm sorry, those are moving up now. They're saying inflation is going to be higher. And so this is something Jerome Powell says here yesterday. Hey, our projections, our inflation are higher than what they were in March. The March projection was 2.7. Now it's 3. It was 2.2. Now it's 2.4. Unemployment's higher. GDP is actually lower. Okay. So PCE inflation being higher than what they were in March, he's hanging on to that as a reason not to cut. You're going to hear from him in a second. He's hanging on to PCE inflation as a reason not to cut. Their projection. Okay. Well, you projected at the beginning of this thing when you, Jerome Powell, convinced Congress, when you shoved $2.3 trillion down Congress's throat, last time you're going to get to print it. It's like giving drugs to a drug addict. They're going to take money. Congress is going to take money if you tell them they can print it. You shoved it down their throat. You said you weren't playing politics. This is the beginning of the Biden administration, if you can remember back to that. And you projected that inflation is transitory. That was your projection. So why do I believe any of your projections now? Okay, you haven't gotten them right in the past. Here's the famous dot plot from the Fed. Okay, 2025. Here's the assessment of monetary policy. You've got 2 dots here saying, we're going to cut. You do have 7 dots. So these are they don't tell you who it is in the committee, but you got 7 dots saying, hey, we're going to end where we are right now between the 4.25 and the 4.5. So you've got 7 of the 12 person,
it's like Morse
member
code. What is this?
So this is kind of these dots here. Okay. This is not, Jerome Powell,
the most inelegant way for the government to display information ever.
Jerome Powell is not a creature from Mars, and they're trying to send us a signal here. This is the members of the committee where they're projecting rates will be at the end of the year. Okay, where the Fed target rate is going to be. Okay, so 2025, if you look between 4.5 and 4.25, that's where we are now. 7 of them say we're not cutting. Fortunately, there's more than 7 members of the committee that said, oh, we'll be lower. The majority of the committee is still calling for 2 cuts, 2 quarter-point cuts. So this is their new updated projections. They do the projections every 3 months. Here's the new projections. Most members of the FOMC say we'll be at a level of 3.75 to 4 at the end of the year for the Fed fund target rate. Okay. 2 members say it's only going to be a quarter point. And there's 2 members that actually say we'll go further, 3/4 point. Maybe look for one of these 2 dots to be named that shadow chair that we've talked about with President Trump having maybe that one piece of leverage announcing a shadow chairman or chairwoman. It's going to be somebody who wants cuts. Okay. Then you've got the dot plot kind of spread out in 26. You got somebody really wants to keep rates elevated. They only want 1 cut over the next 18 months, and that's a quarter point. That might be Jerome Powell himself right there, just hanging firm, saying he doesn't play politics, but hanging firm on high restrictive rates. Everybody come 27 is under 4, and then you've got the longer run is somewhere around 3 for the majority. Okay, so that's the big projection. The other big projection is the committee believes that PCE inflation, their favorite target, is going to be higher now at the end of this year. They think it's going to go up to 3. Their March projection was 2.7. PCE inflation right now is under 2.5. So the Fed is highly concerned that inflation goes up over the next 6 months. That's what they're saying in this projection. In fact, they don't even think we get to 2% by the end of 2007 anymore. 2027, rather. Okay, in March, they said we'll get to 2 in 2027. We're basically at 2, guys. Pull owner's equivalent rent out and wake up. Okay, Realtor.com can figure this stuff out. There's a lot. There's been real estate investors that have called this a couple years ago on CNBC. We covered it. Okay. So if we want to just kind of look at a chart real quick before we go to the commentary, here's the projection, June projection, now March projection, where their target's coming in. Okay. So 2 cuts is still the projection right now. Let's move over to Jerome Powell's Q&A. There's a lot here, a lot more here than there was over the last meeting, a lot more to go through in my mind as it relates to housing. And let's jump into the first question. He did not mention housing, mortgage, home, loan, builder, construction at any point during his opening statement. So the rest of the opening statement that I didn't get, we're going to kick, just roll right over that. First time housing was mentioned was during the Q&A segment. Okay, so avoided housing, avoided builders, dove into tariffs and uncertainty. Favorite word at the Fed, uncertainty. They couldn't project their way out of transitory at the beginning of this thing. And I don't buy into some of these projections now.
I think this is like the one time the president got his name for somebody wrong. He was calling him always late Jerome. Should have been uncertain Jerome. Uncertain
Jerome is definitely the Powell we have now. Let's go to 10 minutes into the Q&A. First time housing comes up. Colby Smith, New York Times.
To what extent has the more limited impact from tariffs at this stage on inflation changed your view on what the ultimate economic fallout will be from these policies and the timing of when they will materialize in the data?
So we've had 3 months of favorable inflation readings since the high readings of January and February, and that's, of course, highly welcome news. Part of that just is that services, core services, both housing services and non-housing services, have really been grinding down toward levels that are consistent with 2% inflation. So that's the good news. We've had goods inflation just moving up a bit, and of course we expect, as you point out, we do expect to see more of that over the course of the summer. It takes some time for tariffs to work their way through the chain of distribution to the end consumer. A good example of that would be goods being sold at retailers today may have been imported several months ago before tariffs were imposed. So we're beginning to see some effects, and we do expect to see more of them over coming months. We do also see price increases in some of the relevant categories like personal computers and audiovisual equipment and things like that are attributable to tariff increases. In addition, we look at surveys of businesses, and there are many of those, and you do see a range of things, but many companies do expect to put all or some or all of the effective tariffs through to the next person in the chain, and ultimately to the consumer. Today, the amount of the amount of the tariff effects, the size of the tariff effects, their duration and the time it will take are all highly uncertain. So that is why we think the appropriate thing to do is to hold where we are as we learn more. And we think our policy stance is in a good place where we're well positioned to react to incoming developments.
Okay. So he mentions at the top of his response that housing services, along with core services and other services, are grinding down towards level that are consistent with 2% inflation. I mean, we're kind of there, Powell. If you look at real-time rental data, not this owner's equivalent rent phony survey that was invented in the 80s that we use. I mean, housing shelter on CPI is still, really elevated, close to towards 4, which is keeping overall CPI. It's only at 2.4. We'd be under 2 if we were using real-time data on shelter. 24 straight months of rent prices moving down. Okay. It goes on to talk about one thing I will say that he acknowledged here that is important to kind of understand about tariffs is that there is inventory. So we saw that, May's inflation numbers, we had a second full month of tariffs and inflation goes down in May. Month 2 of tariffs and inflation goes down. That was supposed to be the month. That was one of the months the Fed was concerned about. May, second month, not the first month, but the second month. Now they're pushing that timeline out further. But to Jerome Powell's point here, you've got some goods that have been pre-bought. Okay. Cigar lounges. They sit on cigars in the humidor sometimes.
That's such a niche product.
It's a niche product, but I know Bongo Ron here in Connecticut, my cigar guy in Connecticut, he's like, hey, I'm not raising prices until I run out of that box. And we're talking for cigars, Bobby, we're talking 25 cents, 30 cents, 50 cents of the tariff increase, because tariffs are on the 10%, whatever it is on different countries. It's on COGS, cost of goods sold. Okay. It's not $10 on top of a $100 item. Okay. Go do some exploratory 5-minute homework on GPT on a tariff toll booths. Okay. It's on the cost of goods sold, not 10% of the total price. So it's not as big a number on the consumer. Nobody wants to raise prices. I'm not saying that, but it's just not as big of a number as people think. And so other cigar lounges, Bobby, Naples,
oh my God,
they've already increased the prices. My point is some have increased prices, not all, but Powell's making a point here. Hey, some old inventory, they haven't increased prices, but there's a lot of retailers that have just seen the opportunity and said, I'm jacking them up now, and I'll blame it on
tariffs. Go through stock a lot quicker of cigars in Naples. It's nicer. You want to smoke them more.
Listen, I know what they're going through and what they're not. They've raised all the prices. Okay. I keep an eye on the cigar industry. By the way, I keep an eye on the vending machine industry.
Is this the honey bun?
Honey
analogy?
buns. If there's a lot of honey buns, people are hurting. It's the high price item. I'll have more on that one day. Okay. Let's go to question from the Associated Press. Chris Rugaber had a question, and we've got some housing data question in here.
Thank you. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. There is an argument out there in favor of cutting rates more immediately. Inflation has continued to cool and is back at roughly 2% despite the tariffs. And I guess I also wanted to ask about, cracks in the job market with gross hiring slowing, concentrated in just a few industries. We've seen some housing data, including this morning, that have been pretty weak. Do you see any concerns that the economy is weakening and that is a reason to cut rates going forward?
So we do of course monitor all those things. I think if you look at the overall picture, what you're seeing is 4.2% unemployment and an economy that's growing at a rate hard to know given the unusual flows in the first quarter, but it appears to be 1.5%, 2%, maybe a little better than that. Sentiment has come up off of its very low levels.
They're very low. Sentiment's
still
very
depressed.
low.
So, you can point to things. The housing market is a longer run problem and also a short run problem. I don't think it's indicative of, basically the situation is we have a longer run shortage of housing, and we also have high rates right now. I think the best thing we can do for the housing market is to restore price stability in a sustainable way and create a strong labor market. And that's the best thing we can do for the housing market.
Pause it right there for a second before we go on to the job market portion of his answer. This, to me, when it relates to housing, is the most consequential statement Jerome Powell has made since the fight against inflation in any of the pressers. The housing market is a longer run problem, also a short run problem. The longer run problem he's talking about is the short of housing. It's the same headline every mainstream media outlet wants to cling on to. 3 to 7 million homes short. I've been talking about it for years. Put the word affordable in front of it, or it doesn't matter, doesn't mean anything. We're not 5 million homes short to meet demand where builders are building and at the price point they're building at. No, sorry, we're 5 million affordable homes short to meet demand, 3 million, whatever the number is. Powell's been really hanging on to that mainstream media headline. Look at where inventory is going in the Sunbelt states right now. Do we have a housing shortage there? No, we do not. We also have high rates right now. Yes, Powell, you created them. I think the best thing we can do for the housing market, here's the consequential statement from Jerome Powell. The best thing so who's we? He's talking about the Fed, can do for the housing market is to restore price stability in a sustainable way and create a strong labor market. Well, how do you restore price stability in a sustainable way? Well, rates could come down and then monthly payments would be sustainable for more buyers. Okay, that's not something Jerome Powell's willing to do. So the pressure of the high rate, Jerome Powell might be asking for the rate to push prices down. He said before, I don't care what happened to housing prices, not our concern. Don't care about housing. Now he's talking about a sustainable way to restore price stability. Is Jerome Powell calling for pressure from rates, inventory increases on housing that creates an environment where prices go down? Okay, just because you have a strong labor market, the American consumer gets a lot of their wealth stability from their house, Jerome. I don't know if you know this. It's not just having a job available to them and being able to rent an apartment. It's being able to invest in their future. So he says the best thing that they can do for the housing market is price stability, restore price stability. Well, rental stability has been restored 24 months ago. You haven't recognized it. So if he's talking about home prices, what does price stability mean? I would have followed up with that. Let's go to the rest of his question about the job market. He says the strong labor market. That's important. What's the rest of the answer? Then Nick T follows up on that.
It's about the job market. Again, look at labor force participation. Look at wages. Look at job creation. They're all at healthy levels now. I would say you can see perhaps a very, very slow continued cooling, but nothing that's troubling at this time. But we watch it very, very carefully. So overall, again, the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to economic developments, and for now, and we'll be watching the data carefully.
Yeah, they'll be watching the data. Now, Jerome Powell flip-flops a couple times here. Go to the 23. We're going to go to Nick Timmeros in Wall Street Journal. But before we do that, he flip-flops a little bit between hard and soft data. He talks about projections. He talks about hard data a lot. So he's been flipping between the two, not really sticking to one. Let's go to Nick T, Wall Street Journal.
Those things. And I think as the data come in, you should see those differences diminish.
If I could follow up, you've said the policy is in a good place and that it's modestly restrictive. Given all the uncertainty you just talked about, tariff levels, uncertainty around the pass-through, is it price increases versus margin compression, some of the softness that Chris talked about in labor and housing, why wouldn't it be better to have rates at a more neutral setting as the economy heads into this period of very high uncertainty?
Great question, Nick.
So if you just look backward at the data, that's what you would say, but that's not. We have to be forward-looking. And the thing that every forecaster, every outside forecaster, and the Fed is saying is that we expect a meaningful amount of inflation to arrive in coming months. And we have to take that into account. So I think a backward-looking look would lead you to a neutral stance, but we can't. We have to look at that, and because the economy is still solid, we can take the time to actually see what's going to happen. there's a range of possibilities on how large the inflation effects and the other effects are going to be. So we'll make smarter and better decisions if we just wait a couple of months or however long it takes to get a sense of really what is going to be the pass through of inflation and what's going to be the effects on spending and on hiring and all those things.
All right. So listen, they're looking at the data, but sometimes they look at the soft data, sometimes they look at the hard data. I don't know. This to me was maybe one of, I know the market hasn't reacted as, I guess, negatively as I'm reacting to Jerome Powell. You know, I think the comfort of knowing on the dot plot that there's 2 cuts coming, the market, it's down a little bit here to start the day. So narrow loss yesterday and down a little bit here today. You know, we're looking at, obviously we care about the 10 years, still under 4.4, kind of where we were before Powell's talk. So not a huge swing on the with the market here today. We're still obviously waiting what the heck is going on in the Middle East. That could have an impact more than anything. But Jerome Powell here is you know, kind of dancing around any you know, conversation that has to do with getting rates into a place that the consumer, small business, you know, mortgage borrower could really see as an affordable place. Let's go to this question from Kelly O'Grady from CBS News, and then we'll have one more question there on the Q&A.
Perfect.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Kelly O'Grady, CBS News. You're famously known as the guy that makes decision based on data instead of speculation.
This is a great
You
question.
said today, and the inflation data is in a good place. We don't know how tariffs are going to impact prices going forward. That's uncertain. But I've got to go back to the last time that you cut rates in December, and there was still the what if of tariffs. So what made you feel comfortable cutting then when inflation was higher than where it is today and you didn't cut today?
Pause it right there.
Well,
This is such a good question from this CBS News, Kelly O'Grady. Hey, last time you cut, inflation was higher. You've said in the past when inflation gets close to 2%, you're going to start cutting. Inflation was higher. Tariff, you know, December, Trump had won. You know, remember, Powell says he doesn't play politics. The only time they cut and announced when they were making the cut, the December cut, was announced pre-election. The other cuts came pre-election. Remember, Jerome Powell is in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Okay. Go look up who his neighbors are. Okay. So he says he doesn't play politics. The only cuts were right before the election, and they announced that they would do the December one. Okay. And then we'll wait and see who wins and see if we're going to keep cutting. Obviously, policy change. I get it. You got to see all that stuff. But Kelly O'Grady, CBS News, this is a phenomenal question. Let's go to the answer.
the forecast for inflation in December was 2.5. Core PCE for 2025. The forecast was 2.5%, which is a good inflation forecast. I think what we've learned is that, and this was long before we had any idea of what the actual policies would be. We've learned that tariffs are going to be substantially larger than forecasters generally thought. And, you know, we don't, our forecasts are generally not particularly different from those of other, you know, well-resourced.
Except when it comes to forecasting
operations.
inflation,
So
transitory
what we
versus
learned,
explosive.
particularly in April, was that very substantially larger tariffs were coming, and that would mean higher inflation. That's what happened. And so you saw 2.5% forecast in December. You saw 2.8% in March, and you see 3.1% now. So it's 0.6 higher inflation for 2025, and that's a big part of the change, and that's due to the effects of the tariffs that are, you know, we don't know where they're going to land, but it's pretty apparent they're going to land higher than outside forecasters were really guessing at the end of last year.
My follow-up to that,
All right,
consumers,
hold on,
right? We're
before the
looking for
follow-up.
relief on.
So, you know, they had a projection in December that PCE inflation, that's their favorite target, would be 2.5. then, like he said, in March, they raised it. Oh, end of the year, it'll be 2.7. Now they've raised it to 3% in this latest projection here this week. Well, right now it sits at 2.5 and it has been going down. Okay. This number has been going down since tariffs and everything started. Okay. So the hard data, Jerome, is going down on inflation while your projections are going up. It's why I think this was such a great question. It's like, hey, you're completely yourself from December at this point. You're using tariffs as this crutch of like, we can't, like, all we can say is inflation is going to go up, yet 2 months after tariffs, they go down. But he keeps telling us, like, the boogeyman's coming. So
would Tom Toole, the Fed chair, have answered that question better, you think? In a more direct and succinct way?
I think Tom Toole would have cut. All right, let's go to the follow-up there.
On rates when it comes to mortgages, car loans, small businesses want to take out more manageable loans. When you look at the cumulative inflation over the past 5 years, prices have risen over 20%. It's been a rough road. So what is the tipping point then for the wait and see approach in terms of how much it's going to help versus when it hurts the American consumer?
Well, I mean, we're trying to restore price. Best thing we can do for the public that we serve is restore price stability. If we can, and we will, restore price stability, meaning 2% inflation on a durable, sustainable basis. That, and also maximum employment. If we restore those things, that's the best thing, and that is our goal. The best thing we can do for the American people, for households and businesses, that is the ultimate thing that we can deliver.
Okay, so
and they can make
they've had basic maximum employment here throughout this entire fight on inflation, which has been unique. That'll be the thing, as Logan says, that moves the needle more than inflation. When and if labor breaks, that's when they'll start to get serious. And it's not going to be until then they're going to keep using the boogeyman approach on inflation with tariffs. You can continue on here.
Decisions without having to think about inflation all the time. So in the meantime, we have to keep rates high to get inflation all the way down. They're not very high. Let's be honest. I would say policy is modestly or moderately, probably modestly now restrictive. If you look at the economy, it's not performing as though it were performing under very strict monetary policy, very restrictive monetary policy. So I would say probably modestly restrictive. And so what it will take is confidence that inflation is coming down. Now, I would say without tariffs, that confidence would be building, because if you see what's happening with non-housing services and housing services, which are the other two big pieces other than goods, those are coming down really nicely now. So I think we have to learn a little more about tariffs. I don't know what the right way for us to react will be. I think it's hard to know with any confidence how we should react until we see really the size of the effects, and then we can start to make a better judgment. So that's what we're doing, and I think we can take the time to do that because unemployment is 4.2%. Wages are moving up. Real wages are moving up at a healthy clip now, and inflation is 2.3% headline inflation.
Yeah, so cut the
over
rates.
a 12-month basis.
So cut the rate. Unemployment low, wage growth strong, economy, inflation down to 2%. So time to cut. Stop playing politics. It's like you're saying obvious things.
All forward-facing government positions like that should be like the press secretary when she called out the reporter and she said it was a stupid question. Like, this is the energy we need from Jerome. Direct answers.
It's like you're just saying everything is where we said we would start cutting a couple years ago when we get up to this point. And now you're not cutting. We got one last question. Ed Lawrence, Fox Business. Let's go to that, and then I'll summarize from there.
Down, the economy is moving at a solid pace. Inflation has come down over the past 3 months, and this is all moving in the right direction. So, are you indicating here that Americans should expect some sort of economic pain in the second half of the year?
I'm not saying that at all. From our standpoint, what I can say is that the U.S. economy is in solid shape. Inflation has come down. The unemployment rate remains at 4.2%. As I mentioned, real wages are moving up. It's a good job creation is at a healthy level. Unemployment, again, as I said, low. Labor force participation in a good place. So, and what we're waiting for to reduce rates is to understand what will happen with really the tariff
There you
inflation.
go. There you go. All
There's
right.
a lot of uncertainty.
I'm kind of over it.
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here. So it's all about the tariffs. Okay. I think, one thing we learned about tariffs, I've been saying they're light switchy. Okay. You can turn them on, turn them off. You've seen that this administration has already shown a willingness to do that, negotiate. Now, I think, what's going on, obviously, in the Middle East is a major pull of time and resources that, that might pull away from some of these trade agreements, unfortunately, for, the economy and all of that kind of stuff. But, we've seen 2 months now, 2.5 months of data that suggests inflation is not going down, but they're going to continue to hang on this tariff thing. Tariffs have been very partisan driven. Remember, economic analysts leaning left have said tariffs are going to be the worst thing in the world. Economic analysts leaning right have said they're going to bring in revenue. They have brought in a lot of revenue. You saw those early numbers. But economic analysts leaning right said they're going to be great. There's been a lot of partisan hackery as it comes to tariffs. And I think Jerome Powell, honestly, is playing the same game. You get rates down and you get that 30-year fix down. And this is what the administration understands. The 10-year comes down, the 30-year fix comes down. You get these to move down. One, it becomes easier to refinance the American debt. Important. But the American consumer gets access to capital at a lower rate. You get 6% 30-year fixed mortgage rates. Logan Mohtashami's number is 5.5 million existing home sale transactions in a 12-month span. We've been trending at 4 million. I mean, the amount of growth is just mind-boggling that we get just dropping 1% on the 30-year fix. Housing not part of the dual mandate, Logan says. And so you see that here. Employee residential building construction still moving up. A recession indicator would be if this starts to drop. It is starting to flatten here. We'll keep our eye on that. The only thing here, I mean, look at this, right? This is existing home sales. These are low levels. You got to go back to the 90s. Okay. You got to go back to the great financial crisis or when Mariah Carey was in the Walkman to really get existing home sales back in the same place. Okay. And Mariah Carey was just starting out back in these days. So you got to go back a ways to get existing home sales, at this level. And this is all due to this restrictive policy. And the only thing that's going to move Jerome Powell, it's clear. I mean, he basically cleared it up for us. He's going to hang on this tariff thing. He'll ride it out the rest of the year. The tariff boogeyman, he wants the talking points from, one side of the political aisle on tariffs are going to dominate all of his decisions. And so, that's where we're at on that. Labor is going to be the only thing. We've got 3 weeks of labor softening. So maybe 45 days. I hope it doesn't get worse. I don't want people to lose their jobs and all of that, but in 45 days, we may see a different story in labor. Okay. Still calling for 2 cuts. That's probably likely why the market didn't move too much here. And we don't have much of a market. I think the market now is in wait and see mode on Middle East. We've got really the last 30 days. We're kind of at a low spot for the 10-year. If we go 90 days out, we're kind of, where we've been. Certainly not as low as we were in April on the 10-year, but under 3.4 on the 10-year Treasury. Yesterday's 30-year rate came at 6.87. Really kind of where we've been hanging, just under 6.9. All right, there's your Jerome Powell day. That's the entirety of that. Have a Leo Perea, EXP CEO interview in its entirety from the gathering up on the main channel here. Put it up yesterday, getting a ton of feedback from that. Best way to support, get access to this content, know when it drops, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell. That's the best way, free, simple way to support. We'll have a new Knowledge Brokers pod tomorrow over on the Knowledge Brokers channel. And to get access to everything that we do here, tomorrow we're getting a new content drop inside of BAMX. To get access as a BAMX member into school, go to school.com/BAMX, SKOOL.com/BAMX. BAMBBQ.live. If you want to hear more from Leo, that interview, he's going to be at the virtual event July 16th, completely free. That's 12 to 2, Wednesday, July 16th, Eastern time. 3 major CEOs, including Ryan Serhant, dropping the heat over the summertime. Myself and Eric, Broke Agent, will be moderating that. So July 16th, BAMBBQ.live. All right, there you go. There's your hot sheet for today. We'll see you back later on in the channel walkthrough. Tomorrow, Knowledge Brokers, back Monday morning with the hot sheet. Of course, until then, toodaloo.